Well, it's been raining for the past couple days, so I finally broke down and built myself a brand new ground station. I've got diversity, I've got 2 receivers, place for a battery, place to hang the Fat Shark goggles. This ground station features a 1.3 gigahertz 9.5 dBi helical antenna, right-hand circularly polarized. Got it from Urban Drones for $69.99. Got 2 receivers. The other receiver I've got plugged in a 1.3 gigahertz Skew planar wheel, again right-hand circularly polarized. I bought this one with a right angle on it, and I bought another one that's a straight fit for my Skywalker. I've got Eagle Eyes ground station, FPV station with a plastic case. That's from Ready Made RC. It was $89.99. Battery, it's a zippy battery, 5,000 milliamp hour battery. I used to be a flight pack for my Skywalker, but it's getting kind of tired, so I'm using it for my ground station. Best part is this tripod. I looked everywhere for a tripod. I wanted something that would collapse down really short. This one collapses down to just a little over 18 inches long when it's completely collapsed, and it extends up to about 60.5 inches. So I'm 6'2", and this thing, the top of the Skew planar wheel is right about the same height as the top of my head. So it's about 6'2" as far as the top of one of the diversity antennas. So it completely gets over your head in any time. But the tripod is a Manfrotto compact, is what they call it. It's a model number MKC3-8H01. Got it from I got it from Target for $49.99. It was on sale. Normally I think they're $59.99, but they're worth it. They're kind of they're a little bit. They seem a little bit kind of like they flex a little bit too much for my taste. But I like the height. It's made out of metal or some type of aluminum, and like I said, it extends up really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole ground station apart piece by piece. You can follow along. That way you can see completely how it's constructed. That way you can make your own. Okay, so it's really cool. Just hang on for the ride, watch, take notes, and build your own. What I'll do is I'll take it apart the way I put it together, and then if you want to put one together just like it or similar, you can just follow along. So the very last thing I added, you got to have the Fat Shark, place to hang the Fat Sharks. Really important when you have Fat Sharks, you don't want to hang them upside down like this, where the lenses can hit the sun, because it'll damage them. These things are $300, the most expensive things on my ground station. So what I did is I made a hook, and it hangs just like this, keeps it level. And all this is a piece of copper wire. This is like ground wire out of house wiring. I just ripped the Romex insulation off, and I stole a piece of 12-inch, 14-inch grounding wire. I don't know what gauge it is. I believe it's 10 gauge. I'm not certain though. But anyway, these for now I don't have it secured in there. I just have these long extensions. I just bent it just like this. If you want to make one of these, just bend it just like this. I'll give you a good view of it, and make sure the width of it will just your Fat Sharks will fit right in. Okay, just cut those off and made them level. And then all I did was I drilled 2 holes deep enough for those to go. Okay, the next thing we're going to disassemble is the antenna, the coaxes. Now, when I made this ground station, I wanted it to be compact. I didn't want it to be any bigger than the length and the width of my antenna. I chose to mount all my equipment on the back of my helical antenna just because it just works for me. If you guys don't want to do that, that's fine, but if you do, it works great. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is unscrew these. As you can see, this first one comes up and around, and it goes right down to the antenna right there where it's soldered in. That comes stock from the factory, of course, from Urban Drones. So when you pull that off, as you can see, the top of this, if I put this in a box or something, then this connector won't get damaged because it's flush. Same thing on this side. Now when I pack my ground station away into my duffel bag, I pull these antennas off just because I don't want this damaged. It's $33. I don't want it squished. Alright, now we're going to talk about the other end of the Fat Shark goggles wire. That wire goes to the Fat Sharks, the other end comes up here. And what I wanted is I wanted to have a system to where I could yank on this when I got my goggles on, and if I accidentally pulled on it, it wouldn't come loose. It wouldn't yank on any of the video connectors, the power connector, or anything like that. So basically what I have here, in order to get this out, You just kind of roll this out and away. All that is just an eye hook. I found it around the house, and I've got it just so it's nice and snug, so that my cable just fits in there. Now the reason for that Velcro right there in that loop is because that just keeps it, that's exactly the length I want it before it tugs on anything. You can tug on this all you want, it won't mess with anything up here. So that's all that is. If you don't have one lying around, just steal one from your wife's. If your wife has a plant hanging around, just throw the plant away and then just grab the eye hook out of the ceiling. She'll never know that it's missing. Okay, so once you've unsecured that, basically you've got the video wire, which feeds your Fat Shark goggles, and that goes into the top port of the Eagle Eyes ground station. And then the only other thing I have is I have these handy little cables, connectors, and they're really good for hooking up batteries for power for 12 volts, and that's all I have there. This, I'm not sure exactly how I had this wired, you guys, but you can figure that out on your own. Okay, the next item I had to manufacture was, I basically have the battery power coming in here, and I have power coming out through these two leads. I only put two in. I left this open right here so I can add another one later if I want. But the power comes out of here, 12 volts, and it goes right into each receiver. Each receiver right up here, right here, and right here, and it also feeds into the Eagle Eyes ground station. So basically I need one of these wires to carry out power through this connector, and I wanted to make this neat. I didn't want a whole bunch of wire laying around. My last setup had just wire curled up everywhere, so I wanted to make all the wiring so it came straight out and had just enough length, just like an inch extra or half inch, no more, so that I could get all my power to my equipment without a huge problem. Okay, so basically what that entailed was making, so basically I've just got power coming from this connector, and I've got all the blacks together, all the reds together with heat shrink. Really simple, nothing crazy going on here. It just, all it does is it branches off each time to each one of these deals. And what I used to do that with was this is 22 gauge wire that I bought from Radio Shack. It's kind of expensive. It was like 10 bucks for 3 rolls. I didn't really want to skimp when it came to my power station. I didn't want my power cutting out because I had crap wire. Alright, one thing before I proceed here, I'm going to show you, I love Velcro. I've got these little Velcro straps, these little tiny ones. I've got these bigger Velcro double-sided straps. Here's another one of the tiny ones. They're like red or gray on one side and black on the other. I really go all out on the Velcro. I've got this kind of small strap stuff, and that came in a package with this black stuff that came together, and it was only like $4. I swear, it was really cheap. But they're really, really handy, and there's like hundreds of them in there. It's like 50 or something, maybe more. This little guy is actually this was like $7. It actually was really expensive, but it's really high strength. It's really, really good gripping for flight packs and stuff. So this is also Velcro, and it was like $7. And then for the heavy stuff, I got this industrial strength stuff, and this is like $25 a roll. Both types of Velcro, the hook and loop, and well, the hook and the loop, basically what it comes with, and then they're sticky on the back. So I also had a pack of these that I've been using for different stuff. These are the bigger straps. They're like the small little guys, only they're bigger, and they're like 5 of them. You get 5 of them for like $4 or something like that. But these are really handy too for strapping stuff down. So the Eagle Eyes ground station basically works by taking 2 video signals from these 2 receivers. This video signal number 1 comes from my helical antenna. That's for long distance. And then the other video signal it gets is from my Skew Planar wheel. And so basically what it does is the white comes out of the Skew Planar, that's number 2 video. It goes into this side. And number 1 video, which I have yellow, just for purpose of keeping stuff easy to keep straight, this comes in from the helical. So basically all you have is you got 2 antennas, both with differing signals depending on where your aircraft is in the sky, whether it's behind you, in front of you, or whatever. So what the Eagle Eyes ground station does is it takes the better of these 2 signals, and then it switches between the 2, either going with AVN1 or AVN2 if you have your diversity up and running. So that's all that does. So these cables, these are just regular TV RCA cables, and like I said, I've got these small little Velcro wraps around on them. They work really good. Got the other one on this side. Again, I have these tied up just kind of perfect to where they're only just as long as I need them to be. Alright, how I mounted the Eagle Eyes ground station is I used some of these Velcro straps, and I have the top one held on by, you can't see that very well, so this is what it is right here. I had an extra one. All this is a spruce, 2 holes drilled in it, and that same exact 10 gauge wire bent to shape, and then I just glue this. You can just glue these wherever you want if you want some Velcro mounts. That's all that is. So it comes off really easy like that and like that. And as a safety feature, I've got Velcro on it too. So when you pull it off, there's Velcro. Now all you really need is the Velcro on the back if you want to do it this way. I initially had this thing, I had Velcro on the bottom because I was going to have it sit right there. There's Velcro here and here, and first I was going to have it just stick it right in there and it'll just hold fine, but it kind of wiggled a little bit. So I decided to go ahead, and what I did was I added 2 hooks. The top one I already showed you. The bottom one, all that is just 2 holes into that plywood. We'll get to the plywood in a little bit. And the 2 holes drilled and another one of those copper wires, custom wires, just stuffed right in there. And so that's all that is. That holds it nice and tight. And what happens is when you go to stick it on here, you just stick it in place, and then you pull your Velcro tight, strap it down. Up here I needed a spacer because, as you can see, the back of this antenna is mounted to basically to my battery holder right here. And so there's 1/4 inch plywood, this hobby plywood you can get at your hobby store. So I put some more 1/4 inch here with some more Velcro. So that keeps it flat. If that wasn't here, obviously it would be at an angle. So that's why this other strip. I left it open right here in case I wanted to run wires eventually for something else. Alright, for mounting the receivers, I just used some spruce spacers. I cut the pieces first, the wood pieces, then I drilled holes directly in the center, and then I screwed them to this receiver. So basically all I had was a receiver with these pads screwed on. And once I had all the pads all screwed on, then I put glue on the back of the pads, and then I stuck the receiver on here exactly where I wanted it, and I kept this flush and this flush. And I did the exact same thing on this side. So cut your pieces of spruce first, drill holes in the center of them, then screw them to your receiver, and then the last step is to put glue on the back of all 4 of them, and then stick the whole thing on right where you want it. I also had to, my screws were a little bit too long, so when I screwed them into the spruce, they actually stuck out the other side. So I actually had to use a grinder to grind off the sharp tips of these screws. So hopefully you want to do that on yours if you have the right size screws. If you do, no big deal, or you can use bigger spacers. Alright, after I had this main L-shaped battery holder built, I went ahead and I added this later as an afterthought. Basically what I wanted is I wanted the power to come out from the battery and plug into this little box, and then I wanted it to come out of these JST connectors. So, and I wanted a switch to control that. And I made it so that it turns on like this. When you turn that on, the power comes from the battery, and it comes out of these leads. That way I can power everything. And inside the box, basically I left this open so that I can access it a little bit. I have some blue, I think this is a stereo wire out of my car or something. And basically all I did was just the positive. On the positive side, I basically cut that. And then each side of that positive wire I soldered onto each side of the switch. So when you turn the switch on, basically the positives connect and it gives the power out. So do this box, mine is 1.5 inches by about 2.5 inches, but however you like. I made mine the same width as my little battery tray. And then when I got it all built, I just epoxied the damn thing on. I put on another piece of 1/8 inch ply. This is 1/8 inch light ply. And then I just band-aid on another piece of 1/8 inch light ply. This is all epoxied together. You want that nice and sturdy. So that's all that little box is. You can make it bigger or smaller, however you like. Alright, the battery straps in, and I use this heavy-duty Velcro stuff for the batteries. Because it's big, heavy batteries, and you don't want it falling around. Basically, you just undo those, and then the Velcro, you pull it off of the Velcro like that. So basically what I had is I had a little height differentiation when I had this plywood, 1/4 inch plywood base, and then I put these brackets on. These brackets I just found out in the garage, and so they work perfectly. It leaves me a space right in here for any kind of wires I might want to run, so that's why I did it that way. As far as the Velcro on the battery, on the bottom side I have the loop material. On the top side I have the hook material. But again, that's like a relic from when it was inside my Skywalker, because I have Velcro in my Skywalker, so I set it down inside the Skywalker and it sticks. And this top Velcro is used to hold the second battery, which powers my electronics, to hold that down. So you don't need all that Velcro if you don't want it. Just put Velcro wherever you want, to help you when it's mounted in there. Alright, this is what I really like about this ground station, is it's got this button right here. This controls the movement of the tilt and the pan. But this button right here, it's kind of dark. But anyway, you just push down on it. Push down on the button and it releases your ground station. This part right here came with the tripod. I'll show you how that's mounted in just a second. Okay, that blind nut right there, I think it's a number 8. I got it from Home Depot. You can use really any blind nut and any screw you want. That screw is also from Home Depot, and so is the washer. So this little mounting plate, which is normally what goes on the top of your tripod, normally your camera mounts to that. But I removed that hardware and I just used my own screw. The screw went in through the bottom. Didn't have to modify that plate at all. That's the stock. I didn't have to modify it one bit. All I had to do on the top is I had to drill 2 holes. A bigger hole for the blind nut to go down into, and a smaller hole for that. It's like an alignment pin on the plate, on the camera tripod mount. I'll show you what that looks like when I pull that apart. One other thing real quick. Once I got that screw mounted on there with the washer, the top of it poked out a little bit too far. That has to be absolutely flat right there. So I had to take my grinder and grind the top of that screw down. You can't really see it, but that screw's got a flat top on it. It's not rounded and smooth anymore. It's been grinded down. And the same thing on this side. In order to mount my battery, I basically had to take and cut that bolt off so that it was flush with the top of that blind nut. I actually messed up the first blind nut. I ground into it, and so I had to actually replace the blind nut after I got done cutting down that bolt. That way it gives you flush on the top and then flush on the bottom. Okay, all I did here is I've loosened that screw, and then this just pops right off. You can see where I drilled 2 holes. There's the blind nut coming in on the left side, and then that hole is just for this red pin. And this is the component that comes right directly with your tripod if you buy the exact same tripod. So that just locks in. You just have to measure really carefully, and then it squishes down, and you just screw it right in. Really easy. Keep it simple. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish dismantling this thing. As you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off both those screws right there, so that bracket comes off, and both those screws, so the bracket comes off. That way all that whole bottom tray and that switch area will completely come off of the back of the antenna. Okay, now I pulled the brackets off. Now as you can see, the original bracket had 2 big holes that were way too big for the screws that I had. I wanted to put really tiny small screws in so that they wouldn't get very far. I didn't want to go in through here. You don't want that touching that metal at all. You don't want anything grounded to this metal. So basically what I had to do is drill 2 brand new holes, smaller holes on each side of the bracket, so that I could mount that. And basically you got 2 matching holes right there. Now these screws you see here, 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 and here, those were screws that I put in there because I epoxied this base, this 1/4 inch plywood. I epoxied this to the back of my deal, and it wasn't sticking very good, so I basically had to drill some holes as it was drying, put some screws in there so it would stay tight. And once again, you want to make sure your screws don't go all the way through to the back of your antenna right here. But this is the battery tray. I used some brackets out of the garage, stuck Velcro on. The Velcro helps to line up the battery and hold the battery as you're Velcroing it down. Okay, now let's pull out the receivers. Alright, here we are. Here's my $69 antenna with everything taken off. Now in retrospect, I always get my good ideas after I'm done with a project, but I recommend if you're doing this project, instead of gluing everything to the back of your antenna like I did, just cut out a piece of 1/8 inch light ply and mount everything just as you see it here. That way you can basically, on the other side of the plywood, you can stick any antenna you want using a pretty easy basic mounting method. That way you can swap between your helical, your patch, your crosshair, whatever receiver antenna that you're using. That's what I would have done if I could do this all over again. Remember, if you do it this way, you don't need to have the Velcro on the receivers. I was initially going to use Velcro, but in the end the Velcro doesn't do anything at all because these spacers don't allow it to stick. Here's how the Skew planar wheel is mounted. I wanted it to be a nice flush mount, really clean. Just the one screw just like this. And in there I've got a right angle connector. And then it's hooked to a piece of, I think it's 12-inch long. But anyway, I used the drill to dive down into the foam that way, to drill into the foam. So basically it comes through the wing and then it ends up right here. Here's another groove cut and then drilled in this way. So it only took one shot. I think I drilled it in from the bottom. So just kind of line everything up and drill it right in. That way you can line that up. And then I cut a groove for the coax cable, which goes up in here and around. Goes to my receiver. I cut a nice clean slot for my for my transmitter. Gotta get that right. I can actually unscrew this right here if I want, and I also can unplug it right there if I want, if I need to maintain it for some reason. It's not glued in anywhere. It's only glued in right up at the top, and I think I have a little bit of hot glue down in this area. But this isn't glued in, this is just Gorilla taped, and then I have it glued, I have it hot glued at the end, so that way I can remove the wire if I want at any time. So I had this transmitter mounted so it's pretty flush. If you look at it flush, the highest point on the TX is the channel indicator, and basically I've got the wires just coming right out. There's 4 wire. I actually added a white wire. It's a regular servo wire. I pulled a white wire off another servo wire so that I had another white wire, so that way I have audio in addition to video. But I'm not using that right now. I'm just using video right now. Servo connectors to hook it all up. You want to see the rest of it. The blue, I used color code for ailerons. The green is color coded for GPS.